and the wasted money on the universities. We spend way too much. I think we should pull all the money from that and put it into CTE.
Representative Hill, thank you for coming, sir.
Yes, sir.
Listen, first off, you had one hell of a session. You got two major bills across the line and signed by the governor. Today, I think at 10 o'clock was the deadline for him to sign any more bills. So it's over, and you got two big ones across the line. Right. Talk to me about these.
Well, the fentanyl bill was huge. I started working on that last summer when I went down to the border and then did all my work down at the LA Sheriff's Department and did my ride-alongs, all the stuff we talked about before. And there was a lot of people looking at this, and this is the third time we've tried to get this through. And all we're trying to do is align fentanyl with the other controlled substances. This is not, a big deal. The pushback was profound. It was really surprising, and it was a real challenge. We were close in some areas. We were real close. We were having a hard time with some of the folks that had a bad rating, and everyone gets kind of off on the red herrings, and that's frustrating because you always look at the objective. We have trafficking, killing kids. It's the biggest killer between 15 and 45 for young people, and we need to shut this down. And we're getting pushback from stopping trafficking. And I always get more excited because the Chinese have such an influence, and the Chinese influence with their crime syndicates in China are all part of this, and we're allowing it. And we're allowing it to come through Mexico. We're allowing it to come into our country, and it's just devastating us. 70,000 people a year to fentanyl, up 110,000 total with meth and so forth. It's devastating. So it's finally we got this across. It was challenging to say the least. And we did have an actual ceremonial signing with the governor on this because it was that big of a deal. There's no other ceremonial signings that I know of. They brought the whole team together, and there was a lot of them. And the governor right there and got a picture of us. This is a big victory for everybody. I think, again, that you want to call the war on drugs. That's probably not the right term because that's an old term. But we're going to shut this fentanyl down and do something, and the cartels, and go after them. This is just the first step. I think that now if we get a good president in there and we go down and control the border and we control the Mexican cartels and go after them, like you've heard me say offline, how I talk, it's a little bit less friendly, but it's we need to go after the core and really go after, interdict the Chinese, the cartels, and then obviously supply is all we're affecting. We try to make an impact on demand. That's really, really hard. Educate the kids. That's the best we can do. There's a pretty good program right now, and shut this down because you know what? They will find another way, and there'll be another drug. There's something coming. The cartels are very innovative. You have to be nimble. There'll be something else. And there's another, I've heard some other stuff, some other derivatives. It's the same thing. It's still, if you shut down the mechanism of trafficking, all you have to do is just change the drug and have that in place and go after it aggressively. I feel pretty good about that. It was the biggest bill of the year, hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down, biggest bill of the year.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com. Well, every law enforcement person I spoke with as well, be it sheriffs or police officers or chiefs, they were all in favor of it as well. And they very much wanted to have one additional tool to keep working up the chain for within these organizations. Because again, the mandatory minimum is not designed to catch like the person who's being trafficked or who's just a random person. It's designed to actually help the people help find people distributing the drugs. You grab one person, now you have a hammer over their head, so you can keep working up the chain in the organization and keep going up to get bigger people. Yeah. So that was the fentanyl one. And then I think it was yesterday, your compulsory language bill got signed as well. Talk to me about that one.
Well, it was frozen. This was a big topic over a month ago, when it first came out, when I got it initially through the committee. And it was held before it came on the floor because they were waiting for another bill. It was Bill 412. It was talking about the definition of gender and sex and so forth. It was a legal aspect. So everyone thought, I was pushing it off like someone. No, we were waiting to get those two to coincide because they basically interlock because the definition of gender in law and then the compulsory language thing. But compulsory language is not a gender thing. It is a First Amendment thing. And I always try to redirect it. No, it's not about gender. So all the transgenders came in and testified and all this. The focus of it, and when I was on the floor, is it's about compelled speech of any sort. So I try to put it into the context of, if you allow this particular group, this ideological, religious, political group, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, to have this much influence on teachers, police, and everyone else, where I have to cower in fear that if I don't say the right thing, I'm going to be in trouble, get fired. That is just how this ever got to this point is truly astounding. So when I'm on the floor, I said it over and repeated to myself probably at least 8 times. This is a First Amendment issue. Compelled speech of any sort is the problem. And I said, well, if we allow this, I said, this is the line in the sand in this battle. We allow this, then okay, game's on. Everyone else needs to come forward. So every church group, religious group, Satanist, whatever, can come up and say, you got to do this, 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 and this. And I use the example where they wear name tags and banners and walk around and hate each other. So it's the whole thing needs to be shut down. When you're in the committee and they get up there and they say, oh, if you take this away from us, they're all going to commit suicide. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, really? I mean, affirmation like that, is it going to make kids commit suicide? I think that's hyperbole and not really true. And this particular law does not prevent the use of gender pronouns. It doesn't do any of that. It's just the insanity that has gotten to in our society, where it was going to be a felony in Michigan to use, if you purposely use the wrong gender pronoun, it's a felony, a $10,000 fine. I said this on the floor. It's a $10,000 fine and 2 years in jail if you kill somebody in a car. So that's how far I go. I said, this is it. You got gender pronoun improper use and killing someone in the car is the same.
Right. In the eyes of the law.
What are we doing? I mean, come on. It's not, and this affirmation that they want, and the ACLU gets up there and says, well, these rights are absolutely essential. And your rights basically say, you have no rights. These people have all the rights, and we're going to make it so. The ACLU just steps on themselves. You listen to them, and it's like, well, we're going to take this group and we're going to crush all your rights because that's what we're going to do. Right. You listen to the way they say it and they go, oh, okay, so I have to be cowering in the corner and in fear if I don't do exactly what this 15-year-old little kid says. Really, that's what we're going to do here? And how is that okay? And I used the example of the ultimate compelled speech. I've said this several times. It's like the compelled speech of mandatory greetings in Hitler's Germany when you go Heil Hitler. That's compelled speech. So I used the example, said I wouldn't last long because and I said this on the floor. I said, I am not going to put up with this. I'm not going to have any mandatory speech forced upon me in the public sector at all. And I don't care who it is, what it is, or what the agenda is. My First Amendment rights are key. And this is the battle. So the distractors, I got some calls say, well, you're saying you're against homosexuals and gay marriage. Wait. No, I didn't even use the term gender that often. It's not about gender. It's about First Amendment rights. It's really basic. So as we talk about red herrings, they grab a hold of this and go, well, this and all these things happen. And I said on the floor, I said, I will make a special effort now to recognize someone's pronoun or title and be respectful of that, and that's fine. When you force me, then I got a problem and I'm not going to cooperate. So that's the whole thing with that. And encapsulate that whole thing. I said, as a representative, I'm standing in front of this group of people, and I made the point, I stand alone on being able to say anything about this. It doesn't get fixed in the private sector because no one can come forward because they have an HR department that will crush them. I have nobody who can threaten me except my constituents. So I said, Mike Moyle, the governor, no one can stop me from saying what I'm saying right now. Man, you go out anywhere else, you cannot open your mouth. In my civilian job, I have to cower in fear. And I use the broadsword is in place, ready to punish me and bully me. And I use this term several times. The whole culture of this forced gender pronoun is a reverse bullying. It's bullying. You say, well, you're going to bully us if so. What they're saying, since you might bully us, we're going to bully you back. And that's what this whole thing is. This Inquisition is a reverse bullying. They're bullying me, and these teachers in fear because a 15-year-old kid's screaming at them. I think it's real basic, and it went through unanimously. It was like 58-11 in the House, and everyone's firmly on board. Right. And as we keep the distractors of saying it's attack on the trans community, they're saying it's not an attack on the trans community. It's not, and they always find those red herrings that someone's going to bully. No, because this is here's the example. They said, well, now a teacher's not forced; they're going to bully you. No, because that's covered by separate law. You cannot actually intimidate and harass somebody. It has nothing to do with anything else. If you're harassing this kid, that's a separate entity that you cannot do. So bullying and everything, again, it's almost like in reverse. What happened is the harassing got reversed, right? But the law is not coming and protecting me. It's in the case of a teacher, if they say, well, I don't have to recognize this gender, I'm going to hassle a Billy boy over here or whatever. Right. No, you can't. So it's all covered. And I said, everyone's constitutional rights are recognized. And I said that in the bathroom bill when everyone pushes back. And I said that last year. And here, everyone's constitutional rights are recognized. And they are, from the kids and the parents and right. the teachers. And it's all fair.
Right. Yeah, it's listening to all of the testimony and the things you were bringing forward. I think it is really clear that people just want to have the option to act the way they want to act, right? And I haven't heard anybody, you or anyone else say, yeah, if this gets passed, I'm never observing somebody's preferred pronouns or whatever. No one I've ever spoken to has said that. They're like, listen, I'm happy to find out if you would like me to call you, whatever. Just don't require it, right? Because that's where you end up going down this really slippery slope. So again, congratulations on that one too. There has been a lot of conversation about whether or not you're actually coming back next year. Now you're running unopposed, right? Mm-hmm. As of right now. And mm-hmm. again, conclusively, you are coming back to serve another term, correct?
Correct.
Right. Correct. Well, that's great.
Yeah. It was, announced on the floor, I'm working on some stuff and I got it covered and working hard. And I'm going to be fine. So
I'm going to be fine.
Everybody
calm down.
Yeah. I'm good. Trust me, it's all good.
Yeah.
So their concern is valid. There was a lot of churning and burning on that, and but I think that with your help and getting the message across, everyone said there's no reason to run against Ted Hill because actually I've had a couple senators go, well, Representative Hill, you always get everything through. And this is a senator said, we see you as the most, one of the most effective guys that gets these things through. Because I got 5 big ones last year that were big, and 2 big ones this year. These 2 are a little bit more contentious, and I had some pretty good ones last year. Bathroom bill,
right?
And so okay, and you're going to come after me and pull the old whatever, the rhino thing, which is just absolutely, it insults me actually.
You just passed a bill defending free speech.
Yeah. It's, and what was one of the primary platform constructs on the Republican Party platform was closing the fentanyl deal. So both those are center right in the middle of what makes a Republican and a conservative. Those 2 are key items. There was a distraction from the IFF saying, had some minus score, which really people didn't pay attention to.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about this, because I've talked to a lot of people about the rating systems. Mm-hmm. Explain this stuff, because sometimes it's weird to me. So the IFF essentially does a meta-analysis of all of people's votes, what they're voting on. They don't actually distribute their grading mechanisms, right? Like they don't say exactly how they came to the determination.
No, they don't.
Of we're like, hey, we're going to give Representative Hill a D, and because he's got a D, like they don't articulate, okay, this bill was worth this much, or it offended these principles, or it, I've really been trying to work through, as just a civilian, just a constituent, trying to work through, okay, how do I personally manage principal conflict? right? Because you have people that vote. Representative Yonmo is a great example of this because she votes a counter to a lot of the Republicans that on bills, say like library bills and things like that. And I'm not saying she's right or wrong, but what she does bring is she brings reasonable conservative concepts, right? Like, localized control instead of state control, or, fiscal impact. If you make a bill that has a punitive aspect to it, there could be a large fiscal impact. And I don't like fiscal impacts and I like local control, right? So her idea of, hey, I have conservative principles that are guiding me to say no to this, whether she's right or wrong, doesn't like whatever. But how do we unpack those? That's always my question. And it seems that the IFF, and again, I don't know them, but it seems that the IFF is handing out ratings without explaining how they're navigating the principal conflict and things.
It is a little bit. They say there is some representation, but usually most of their ratings are on the funding. So that's where most of it comes from. So their primary focus is like, the growth of government, which hey, everyone's on board.
Right.
And I agree with the IFF 97% of the time, except on some things you got to fund certain things.
You got a D. Didn't you get a D?
Well, so, to get, the D, because I voted to fund the Idaho State Police and the Supreme Court and the governor's office and things that.
Wait, is that really why? Is that really what detracted from your rating?
Yeah, and I vote for the roads, and I vote no on the stuff that I don't like, and that would be the universities and the wasted money on the universities. We spend way too much. I think we should pull all the money from that and put it into CTE. And that's and on the launch bill was one they didn't like. But this is one thing I learned as a new representative. I was very objective based, and I said, this is the objective. And the distractors, I didn't necessarily understand. But the threat that I see with this emerging, possible World War III and the gaps we have here in the state that are profound. We're last in 50th in medical. We don't have, there's 4,000 short in cybersecurity. We're super short in construction. We can't even keep up with what we need to do to make this state work because we don't have a good workforce development program. We don't. Utah has a good one. Florida has a good one. Idaho doesn't have one. The launch was like a gap fill. Well, you know what? I voted no on the launch here on the subsidy this year because it didn't serve the purpose I thought it would do. And I even said that. So they picked on me on that one because I looked at, it's a growth of government and okay, you're trying to get kids into these jobs. You get these kids in these jobs, you're going to get more than enough return on that. That's what I see.
Right. The ROI is high.
Yeah, it's high. Well, it was only about 30% effective on that. It was filling those jobs. Those I say essential jobs, 30, 40%, because I got the statistics. It wasn't good enough. I go, no, that's not good enough. So launch, that's, we're going to have to readdress that and put it into something better. A workforce development program that's better to get kids into these essential jobs. I don't like the in-demand jobs. I don't know. I'm talking. So this is where, as a new representative and coming out of the military, and the objective is blow these guys up. This is your job. And all this other stuff is collateral, whatever. This is the objective. What you do in the legislature, this is the objective. No, it's not. All these things are what matter. All this peripheral stuff. And it crushes where you can't get to the objective. That's just the nature of this business. And I've learned, okay, so it's difficult to get precision on what you think you're going to get. Mm-hmm. And from the fentanyl bill, they distracted that from every red herring you could possibly imagine. The launch bill, it's a great thing, but it didn't serve what I think was adequate enough. So I'm saying, I think we ought to redress it and pull it.
Sure.
And it's, and that's when I found out they were giving it to the universities, I went, no.
Right.
Immediately I said, then I voted no. I said, you're giving this money to the university? No, this is supposed to be for these in demand, not these critical jobs that are really more like construction and things like that in the trades. I don't want any more psychology degrees. And they said, 30% is going to university. I said, no, I'm voting no for launch because that's not what I agreed to. And that's not what I voted for. So they could pick on me on the launch. Well, I pulled my launch endorsement because it's not serving where I think it needs to go. Yeah. And so I got picked on that one and then hard on that one. Okay. And then there's the other ones that are pretty basic. So if you want to get, if you want to get an A, vote no on everything. So just vote no and you'll get an A. So you're completely ineffective. It does nothing. It's a gesture. It's like a gesture. So we're still going to pass all these bills and you can vote no all day long, get an A rating. It means, you didn't pass a budget. So you have to pass a budget. talked about that. You have to pass a budget. The whole reason we're there, if we all voted no, we'd be there till August. You have to pass a budget. That's the whole reason we're there. And so it's a little frustrating. I think it's, would they vote no to get a rating? It's kind of meaningless. So I would like that whole thing to just go away, and the IFF would just say, hey, they're going to give us guidance. Hey, this is bad, Representative Hill. Oh, really? Explain it to me. Right. Be a source to guide, give us a resource of how to respond, and don't make it so we're, in this case, somewhat embarrassing when you're elected by 55,000 people and you're letting 2 people in the IFF decide how you're going to vote. It's pretty embarrassing, in my opinion. I think it takes away your independence, and that's not the way you should operate as an elected official. But I don't look at the IFF ratings at all. I don't pay attention to it.
Well, I don't read the news very often either, but I do see people posting sometimes. It's curious. Here, one thing you said that you were talking about security. Now, I find this very interesting. A few months back, you started talking about the critical infrastructure bill that you were morphing into essentially strategic land. Mm-hmm. And you were saying, hey, look, this is a big problem. We have foreign interests purchasing key businesses and land, like Syngenta, the seed company that owns our strategic seed supply, is owned by the Chinese. We're also selling strategic land, farmland located next to military operations. You brought up the example of the Top Gun facility and how somebody had all of a sudden purchased all of this land close to the Top Gun facility and actually installed surveillance equipment. And I listened to you say that. I was like, God, that sounds crazy. Mm-hmm. And then a week ago on Joe Rogan, Dr. Phil knows about this. Talk about psychology. And he starts saying the Chinese and foreign interests are buying up our critical land around military operations. And he popped up a map that showed an overlay of military installations and foreign-owned farmland. They're like, why do the Chinese want to own foreign farmland in the middle of nowhere next to this military base? I wonder. So listen, you have the floor one more time. Help me understand how we've gotten to this point where we have foreign interests purchasing land that's close enough to our top secret military operations, that's close enough to have the capacity to surveil.
Well, I came late in the session. I was to bring forward a critical infrastructure bill that was to include the land piece. The critical infrastructure terminology has some baggage I was unaware of. It has baggage that said that certain global entities like Davos and stuff has some sort of interface, and what made people uncomfortable. So I had to pull that. That critical infrastructure was going to go ahead and secure dams, pipelines, and everything that would be something critically needed to defend, and actually have security clearance requirements, just like the military would have. But they do not have. Well, I started poking around there, and the Idaho Power really pushed back when I started asking those questions. I said, what is your security posture? What do you do? Who do you hire? What is your policy on how you put people in these jobs? And they just kind of went, what? And how do you physically secure them? And I got serious pushback. This is what I've learned in this business. I learned in the military. When I did a lot of weapons assessments, that was what I was famous for. Did a couple of big weapon assessments on big programs. When they push back and say, watch it, they're either protecting a weakness or protecting something highly classified. That's the only 2 reasons they get pushback. The Idaho Power is pushing back. All their lobbyists came up and were surrounding me and said, what are you going to do here? What's going on? What are you talking about? And I'm saying, I'm going to look at what you guys do and how you secure your infrastructure. I'm not confident that you are. Well, they're kind of like, well, what do you mean? I go, well, show me. They will not give me any time. So I suspect that they don't, because security is expensive. And if they don't have to, they won't. It's like this. I use the example of, in the airlines. They didn't secure the doors into the cockpit because they didn't have to, until suddenly, oh, crap. People kicking the door and cut people's throats. All the pilots knew this. We screamed bloody murder on it for years. They weren't mandated, so they didn't fix the doors. Okay. And then we saw what happened 9/11. So this is the same thing with power companies. There's a lot of threat, and this is the thing, the threat is escalated. And I told you what I did in my last job. We'd go after this notionally, and we'd go after power grids and so forth and cut them down, and we'd find these vulnerabilities. There's right now, you can take 5 critical centers of gravity and take the whole Western grid down. There's 3 grids. There's Western, Eastern, and Texas. Take the whole grid down. If you do that, that millions of people would die if you didn't restore it. 5 critical nodes. I don't know what those nodes are. That has to be super top secret, because no one needs to know that, and no one's going to say what that is. So,
but you're aware that there are literally 5 spots that if they got bombed and decimated, it would be over.
So. It's such a thing that you don't have. That seems hard to believe, but okay. So there's certain nodes that would be hard to correct. And my point is when I push in and I get a lot of pushback from lobbyists, I know I need to pursue it. I'm going to go after that hard, and I might have to go after it, separately, because if it's highly classified, and it could be, you don't want to advertise that you're going to spend money to fix this, this, and this. You have to make it quiet. And it's a real serious, and we hear this on the TV, and I said this on the floor, and I've said this even last year. It's coming out now that the Chinese are prepositioned right now in our infrastructure to execute malware and disrupt. So, and it's not just that. How many thousands of Chinese military-aged men come cruising in the country in the southern border? Are some of them PLA operatives? When it's execution phase 5 or whatever for the war, and they go blow up, and they start blowing up these high-value transformers and stuff. Yeah, that's what I would do. I mean, if I was operating and I wanted to beat America, I know exactly what I would do. I would crush America. I know exactly how to do it. You don't think they don't know how? So you can go physical, cyber, all these things. So that critical infrastructure is important. And I got a lot of pushback on that. Okay, that was a separate piece. I had to completely drop that piece. That will be something I'll bring up next year. So I'll just go to the land piece. And that was separate. Last year, I did the bill where foreigners can't buy certain lands, dams, mines, and critical points. That passed.
Even though we sold our water system in Eagle
to the Saudis. We can talk about all day on this.
Side note.
So we got to that point, and what we did with the land piece, it was clear Chinese and nobody could buy agricultural land and so forth. Well, with this new piece of legislation I had here now, it's awesome. Now we had, but we can actually shut them down and actually confiscate the land. So what happens if we identify that Chinese own agricultural land only, that we can demand them to sell it within 180 days. If they don't, we'll foreclose on it. It's sweet. Boy, you wouldn't believe the pushback I got on that. I got that across the committee. I was going to get a hearing in committee, and they stopped it because we ran out of time. But the pushback I got from farmers and stuff, and said the growers are coming in, all the lobbyists are coming in and just freaking out. Why?
Why?
Because why? Because they have a bunch of land that's owned by Chinese, and they have some sort of a deal. And we talked about Syngenta. Syngenta was bought here several years ago. It used to be Swiss. The Chinese own it, and it's owned basically by the Chinese army. So Syngenta is a seed company in Napa. It has all the strategic seed supply for the area. They do all the hybrid and the research and so forth. Well, guess what? I guarantee you they have a whole bunch of land associated with that, and that's Chinese owned. Guess what? We can foreclose on that. That's why they came after me, freaking out. And I go, good, because in Arkansas, Governor Huckabee did exactly that. 450 acres of land that she kicked the Chinese off. I see Syngenta and a company like that as a direct threat opened by Chinese. If I had my way, we need to nationalize that and take it away from the Chinese. We need to do something, because the Chinese owning a strategic speed supply. That is our food supply. Well, are they going to stop it or this or that? No, that's not necessarily what they could do. But the point is they influence it, and we shouldn't have primary infrastructure. Is that primary infrastructure? I guess since it's our food supply, you can interpret it as such. I would say Syngenta cannot be owned by the Chinese. I say that, you put that on the public and say Ted Hill's coming after that, people are going to freak. They will come after me and that's perfect, because then I know I'm in the right place. But the land piece, we can go after the land. We have to go after that first. So Syngenta better get ready, and so if Chinese owns agricultural land, we're foreclosing on it, and we're coming to get it. Okay, that's that piece. The next piece was protecting essential land for military operations. Sure. Then I looked at this, and this is how the Syngenta thing came so that, I can have anything with 100 miles radius of a base or 50 miles. Guess what? Syngenta's within 20 miles of Gowan Field. I can't use that because that means I'd have to kick him out right now, which would be awesome. But I couldn't do that. So what I did is I took a map, figured out our military operations area. It's in southwestern Idaho. It's a big, big area. And make that a sanctuary that no Chinese or foreign entity, foreign adversaries, not foreign entity, but foreign adversaries, cannot specifically can own any land of any sort. The other law was agricultural land, mining, and so they can still buy houses and restaurants and things like that. But in this area, they can't buy anything. They can't buy an outhouse, nothing. Chinese, Russians, the Iranians could buy any land in this military operations area. And why it's important, you have Mountain Home, you have also Gowan Field, they'll get F-16s and so forth. And all the operations they do, weapons performance, they can actually surveil your frequencies. That's how they go after and exploit it. They see the frequency you use for your radars or what you use for communications. They find out what you're using, and then they use that, exploit it, and they will cut you off. And I was an electrical warfare officer for PACOM, and that's what they'll do. If they know where you're at, they will jam it, and they will influence that and crush your ability to communicate, crush your weapons capability. They see your timelines, which everything you do, it's all top secret. They monitor that, exploit it, take it back, and find ways to go against us. So that's why you keep any surveillance. Anybody down there at a farm can have these collectors and sensors and so forth. And they did this. We talked that down in Nevada. Well, Nevada fixed this. They fixed this like about 8 years ago. They kicked everyone off the Top Gun range. There were mines with the Chinese. That's when they found the Chinese mine. They found they owned a farm. There were some other people, some nefarious. The range is clear. I go up there and fly up there now to this day, and there's nothing but desolation. There's no farms, the mines, or there's a couple mines, but they're very closely controlled. So that did get a lot of pushback. I think people are pretty happy about that. I talked to the INL, that's the Idaho National Lab. They want to get included on this too, but they have Department of Energy and stuff. We're going to do the same thing there. So this thing would be an over-encompassing effect there. So these bad people can't buy land because they will. INL is going to be the future big business going out there, nuclear and all these things we're doing. So I'm pretty excited about that bill. That will go first thing next year. It got tripped up because we just got too busy.
Gotcha.
So we'll do that land bill, military security, go after this. I'm not going to use the term critical infrastructure because those words have a problem. Vital infrastructure.
There you go.
Yeah. So critical, they're freaked out. They're saying, that's the globalists are coming after us. And I read some articles. I go, well, okay, I will accept your concerns. So we just want to all we want to do is make sure that Ahmed is not running the power company and ready to go with the switch. Who is screening him? Where's his clearances? Companies have a tendency to go the cheapest. PG&E burned down half of California. Why?
Right.
Because they didn't take care of business. Because it costs money to take care of. Security is expensive.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not super confident that Idaho Power has done everything they can, but they're limited. They're a business. They're going to get by with just what they can. So I think the state can come in and assist, provide, and this is what this new group, they said this is the way you talk about it, that the states are the soft underbelly of security in this country, and the Chinese know this. So they have the federal piece. You have the cyber fusion centers and so forth federally. But you come down to the state level, there is no equivalent of a cyber security or a center to look after the smaller entities from hospitals, government, banks, and infrastructure, because the Fed's not necessarily taking care of that. So the states need to step up and address these critical, the vital infrastructure issues, make them secure physically, and cyber and the human side, because I don't think they're looking at that very closely because the threat has changed. If you talk to some 10 years ago, he says, why can't we hire Mr. Ling? What's Mr. Ling's background? He's a Chinese national. He works for the PLA. Oh, oops! And he's the head of the cyber division down there at the power plant or whatever.
Right.
That's where we need to go through this. Should be entertaining. I think it'll be fun.
Always entertaining with you.
Yeah.
In going through the session, this is the first legislative session that I, as an adult, have really followed pretty closely. And there were some criticisms with some of the things that you were bringing to the table, concerns you had. And I just kept thinking, it's like, well, yeah, Representative Hill's worried about these things because he knows about these things. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, like if I became a legislator, which I'm not going to be, but if I was, I wouldn't have the knowledge base that you had. So some of the things that you do or emphasize or focus on, I'd say like, well, that seems a little silly, or not silly, but it just seems like an overreaction. This is the end of your first term, correct? Yes. These are your first two sessions. What has it been like attempting to express concerns you have to individuals who haven't shared your professional background as a military, fighter pilot? Like you have an inside look into the strategic manner in which we dismantle other countries, which gives you a unique perspective on our weaknesses. Mm-hmm. Has that been difficult to deal with other legislators on? Yes,
hands down. And this is what I stepped in this business, why I got in this business, and what I've done. The cultural battles when I just retired, not even 2 years ago, in a week, 2 years I've been out. The cultural things that were happening were crushing us. The warrior ethos, we need to go back to the families, to the states, the communities, and bring people into the military, stop the madness in the military. DEI, woke, all that other crap is devastating the military. Guys are leaving. I have a young guy just left, F-35 pilot, young guy, said, I can't stand it anymore. He can't stand the crazy, insane, woke garbage that's taken away all what it makes a warrior want to fight. And so that was the first thing. And the second thing when I got in this business, and what is my strength? It's this battle with China. So I did that for 15 years. And so I step in here and I look at, what am I good at? What are my strengths? Well, I would say cultural battles and the future war that's potentially World War III. So I'm this one lone voice, and I'm the only person in the House and Senate, including the governor, has a top secret clearance. I'm the only one. So nobody has a clearance but me. So I need to leverage that and bring in what I learn when I go and get these briefs and say, this is where these threats are, and focus on that. And that's my strength. That's where I should leverage that and pursue that and educate everyone else to make them understand. A lot of people have a hard time, that's difficult because people are trying to feed their families and they don't want to hear it. Well, let me work on this for you. I got this. And try to bring everyone on board to understand, if we don't close these gaps and we don't prepare ourselves, this is not a World War II thing where you mobilize. You fight with what you got, and you're going to fight with the posture you have and whatever preparation. If you're not prepared, you're going to get your ass handed to you. It's flat out. And it can be to the point where it's a phase level impact that if World War III full game on, you're not going to like what happens. If we're not prepared, you lose your infrastructure for a period of months. You have no idea what that would do. Millions of people would die medically, and food supply, everything would cease. We're so ridiculously dependent on computers, distribution networks that are highly integrated and communicated. What happens when you shut all that down? Nothing gets moved, it's bad. If you have a simple thing as just a disruption of supply, we saw what happened in COVID. That's a joke compared to what will happen if we have a war and we go into hardcore cyber attacks. It will take the supply chain down to something you can't imagine. Ford will shut down. You're not going to buy any cars. You won't be able to get a new cell phone. You'll be lucky if the cell phone towers even work. You might not even have internet. Think about that. And the power's out. So you could take these nodes. You could take certain nodes of communication banks out. I did this notionally, and on these exercises. It's staggeringly, it's scary, but you have to prepare. So we need to focus on that objective, trying to prepare for World War III. And it says all that Ted Hill wants to do is, prepare for World War III. Fine. I'm good with that. And I'll try to pull as many people in to listen. And it did pay off. It did last year. We got some good stuff through that land bill we got last year, and we're going to do this next year. That's important. And then we go after some more of these technology things and prepare ourselves infrastructure-wise. We're doing the right thing. And Idaho, we're ahead. We're doing pretty well. And that's 2 more years. If I can get these big things through, that's my focus. And everyone else is focused on budgets and other things, If they put me in the JFAC committee, I think I'd hang myself, But, I don't care about budgets. I do, but you want to get in to be, I'm not an accountant.
Right.
I say, okay, I'm a warrior. Okay, focus on what your skill set is. Right. And let's go, and I love that. It says, the states are the soft underbelly of our security posture in this country. And so that's my job.
Right.
And that's what I'll focus on.
Okay, but hang on a sec. I agree with everything you've just said, all right? But you've also taken it upon yourself to spearhead culture wars. Mm-hmm. So, like the bathroom bill from your first session, and then the compulsory language bill that you just passed, you're going after not just, vital infrastructure, however you want to call it, but you're going after things that you see that are deteriorating the core of our culture.
Yes.
Why are you drawn to these things? Because that's not a defendable, like, hey, I got top secret clearance. Listen to me, trust me, because I know this stuff and you don't.
Trust me.
Right? Trust me. This is more like, hey, I'm going to defend the Constitution. I'm going to defend teachers' rights to free speech. Mm-hmm. I'm going to defend, young people using bathrooms, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're going after some of the hottest, nastiest topics that are invading our culture. You're not just staying and like, well, I know the military, so like I'm going to stay with military. Why are you sticking your neck out there?
Well, I see that is, I said in the military, I saw the deterioration of what's in there. And
what does that mean? Because I've heard people talk about that. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but like when you say somebody, an F-35 pilot who's leaving because of the insanity of the military, I'm not a military man. Mm-hmm. What do you mean? What's the insanity?
This where a meritocracy is no longer applicable, where they would just, they will have equity. Equity in the military is insane. That's like having equity on a basketball team. Yeah, you can hire, have a bunch of short guys out there, make it equitable, but you're not going to win. So you have to have a meritocracy. I use the basketball or football team as an example.
Sure.
You don't, there's no equity in basketball. I mean, you break. So why? Because, short people don't play basketball very well. Right. So it's pretty basic. And in the military, it's crushing, where everyone is worried about identities and so forth. It used to be, we're all on the same team. We're all on this team. We're all blue. We're in the Navy. We're going to go fight this war for our country because we're a team. And now it's like, well, we're not really a team now because I got this and I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm this. The military has always been somewhat of a social experiment. A lot of stuff comes in the military first. In some cases, this is not, because I was a very hardcore commander. It's hard to believe that would be true. No,
I could never see that.
But it was like, hey, our job is to fight a war, and this is what we're, and I would tell, I got in front of the squadron and said, if I get the opportunity to get in the show, we're getting in the show. So we're going to train hard and be ready to fight this fight. And, and it's like, what makes us better? Training, attitude, warrior ethos. If you want to join this fight, get out. So I want the people in this are warriors and fighters. So you get in the big picture. When I was there towards the end, I'm this crusty old dude, one of the oldest guys in the Navy, basically, at the time. I'm 61 years old. There's no admirals aren't 60, some are. And I'm talking in these, and I was bulletproof, and they'd ask questions, why, what's wrong? And I won't repeat what I'd say here, but they were just kind of like, Lurch, you can't say that, but you can. And they loved it because they're squashed in this fear of this woke garbage. You know what all it does? It tears it down, where the team concept is lost. The objective of being effective combat entities to actually kill people and blow up their stuff. That's their job. That's being lost. And
Who's bringing in the woke culture to the military?
it's right out of the DOD.
Because I've always imagined the military as like the ultimate meritocracy, right? Yes. Again, I've never been in the military. I was on the rowing team at Cal. That was a fierce meritocracy, and that was the highest level of athletic. Like I won a national championship. The training was absolutely beyond anything I had ever done. And they're like, look, we don't care. We don't care that you have a test. We don't care that you're exhausted. We don't care about any of this. You're either showing up and you're absolutely going to be the best, or you will not. And I've always imagined that the military was an extension of that kind of world. But like, where did this cultural shift come from?
It started, there's a little bit, it gets kind of gritty, with men and what makes effective combat units. People that go through difficult training, they come together and they bond, and this all. So there's a lot of stuff that was kind of fraternal and kind of and all that, all that. And they shut that down to a point where it actually completely eliminated it. So that was not helpful. Men get together, and now we have women too. And so that whole piece is separate. And so we got women in the force, and we're going to do something different. Okay, that changed it. That doesn't mean you don't have the same type of like, we're together as a team and we fight and we're going to do this. I think that it's gotten to a point where they're trying to make it, we're going to have transgenders. That is a complete distraction. Transgenders in the military. You have to prove to me that is going to make an effective piece in the military. Well, when I was a commander, medical readiness was like the number one. We can't have guys, when we go on deployment, have issues and they can't go, or women, this is a problem. We're ready to go on cruise and two of them get pregnant. We don't get anybody to replace them. They stay home. That was a real problem, bringing women in the military. I'm like, this is a real problem. So they're dropping out, and guys can't say, I'm staying home because my back hurts or something. So that was really an issue, because that's a medical readiness. We have dental readiness, and so all these things. Transgenders were frustrating, because how are you going to bring somebody out there that has to have all these shots and all these things going on, and he's having his breast removed, or whatever they're doing. It's a complete distraction. If you prove to me that a transgender is the best cybersecurity guy you've ever got, I bring him. But if we're bringing them in there just because that's who they are, and I pull them in the unit, oh, sorry, he can't work on the deck today and do his job because of this, and this, I think it's a distraction. I mean, people going under transition in the military, it's insane. Now, if they're fully transitioned and they integrate, that's fine. But they're bringing them in and letting them transition when they're in the military. That the cost to the unit and the cost to the medical, I was just absolutely incensed by that. I mean, that doesn't make any, that's a distraction. And that is a huge distraction, because all these things we talk about, genders and all that, that's going in the unit. Can you imagine being in a unit and have somebody, hey, watch it, Skipper, you can't call me that. I'm sure it's that way. I've heard stories like that. That is insane. So the DEI is extremely destructive, because diversity, there's no diversity in the military. We're a single team. You can have your independent diversity, but we're talking about going as a unit. We're all green, we're all blue, we're all part of the military unit. They've taken that apart and separated this and started saying you have special rights in this, and you're a victim, and that is toxic, absolutely toxic. And you see the structure of what we're doing, and are we a meritocracy now? I will say no, because I've seen it. No, so we are selecting by, I would say, identities, and that is destructive, and it makes people angry. So they tried to do this with women, and initially with the women, they're going to say, well, women are at a disadvantage in the military. And they are, because they have, pregnant and stuff, and it's a problem. Yeah. You can't keep a path going when you get pregnant and things like that. So what they were going to do is they're going to say, okay, we're going to let women get pregnant and have on-ramps and off-ramps and stuff, and they come back and they can still be right up with everyone else. Well, that was ridiculous. She takes a year off. I go on deployment and I come back and she has the same rating as I have. The guys went crazy. That stopped, because no, the women that's just a challenge. Women in the military and having babies, you can't have babies and be in the military and expect to compete with the men. Sorry, it's just what it is. And trying to make that equitable, the only way to make it equitable is to make it unfair. The men will suffer. So that's that whole thing. I think they got that leveled out. They used to have a lot of issues where women get a lot of special attention and so forth. That's not, I know some women fighter pilots. I know one is really good. So no, that's not happening anymore. She's there because she's good. That's the key. And we make sure it happens that way every time. I totally buy into her. I'll go with her anytime. And just keep it that way. But when they start to distort it in DEI, even in the universities, inclusion, we're all included. Equity, there's no equity in the military.
Right.
And diversity is something that you can recognize, but is not part of the mechanism of an effective combat team. That's not it. We are a single unit, and our focus is mission. Our focus is to kill people and blow up their stuff. And that's it. I don't care what color you are, gender you are, whatever. Shut up on all that. Let's do our mission. And I think that's where guys are lost. That is no longer happening. The mission is we better prepare this diversity thing to make sure everyone's happy and make sure the equity is happening here. You look at the DOD, I'm just saying, look who's in charge of the DOD right now. I go, is that because they're the best people there or something else?
Right.
So you always wonder, you don't know. So it's a toxic environment. And that young guy, I'm just a hardcore warrior. You got the chance to be at the cutting edge and go fight the Chinese or whatever. Any good fighter pilot wants to get in the fight. Any good fighter pilot, he is a hawk. He wants to get in the fight, and he's pulling out. Why? I mean, I would lean into it. If they call me right now, hey, Lurch, you want to come back and we're going to go fight China? Yeah. You take a 64-year-old dude, I'll do it. I'll strap one on and go. And so all my buddies are that way because we're a different generation. We have a different warrior ethos. These young guys are like, I don't know. I'd rather go home and play video games or whatever. I don't know. That's a little harsh, but
it's not entirely wrong. It's not entirely wrong.
Yeah, it's a little different. And this guy, I still with a company where I fly fighters. So we got a bunch of fighter pilots. I hang out with the fighter pilots that are in the Navy now, and hearing a young guy say that. And here's another piece. The Top Gun skipper. I was with him last week, and he's getting out of the Navy. He's the Top Gun's commander. That's like an apex position. It's a big deal. And when he bails, he's getting out. That's bad. It sends a signal. So here you got the guys, the apex of a fighter pilot community, and he wants to get out early. Why? I asked him. I said, why? What are you getting out? I said, he told me all these reasons. That's not good. That never happened in my day. No way. That sends a signal to all the other JOs, something ain't right.
Man, I love talking to you, but I always end a little terrified.
Well, you should be, because when everyone come to my office and I scare the crap out of them.
Yeah. God. Listen, thank you for coming in today. Thank you for what you did this session. You worked really, really hard. You were one of the few people to get bills across and signed into law, which is awesome. Awesome that you're running again, and I'm very happy to hear you're in good health. So is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Nope. I ain't dying.
I ain't dying. God.
Everyone thinks I'm dying. I ain't dying.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for coming in
All
today.
right. All right. Bet.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.